This week we have finally learned to tie our shoelaces. We dissect the use of web browsers across platforms and countries, with a few surprises as a result. We delve into consumer-grade 3D modeling with your smartphone, and then talk about efficiency and limiting food waste in the world. Yes, this show is making the world all better, and stuff. This week's episode brought to you from down the rabbit hole.
And welcome to another episode of The Day in the Pain, the show that ferments their own horse milk and have so far donated $1.95 to the protection of pre-millennium computers. Good evening, Joel. How are things?
I'm trying to digest what you just said. I was lamenting. I have a Surface, a book, anyways, and it's got a proprietary power cord, which I somehow managed to cut in two places, and God bless my electrician son, did his level best to see if he could put it back together, but I dare not plug it into the device because I don't want to juice it incorrectly. But yeah, that's been my day.
Oh, good.
So
yeah, I don't know if you can hear in the background here, but it's raining. We've now kind of gone into winter, and we've had crazy weather in the last 24 hours overnight. I was actually woken up by thunder, which I'm not sure has ever happened before.
Does that scare you? That
we had
the thunder and lightning.
Not really, but the windows in the house were rattling. That's how loud it was, and it woke me up. And it turned the baby monitor in the other bedroom where my son is. It turned that on as well, as in if he was making noise. It was loud, and he didn't wake up at all. Like, he just woke up normal time at 7 o'clock. Went, oh, what happened? But yeah, it's raining again here now. But we'll take that as well. We go from stinking hot to rain and miserable. So I had an interesting story or an observation that we were briefly talking about before, and I thought I'd just share it because I don't know if it's the same all over the world, but I suspect that it might be. So for the people, the listeners that don't know it, I run a bed and breakfast. So we have a converted wool shed, which is very nicely done. It's sort of, we call it a 4.5 star. Has a spa in the room. It has 2 bedrooms in each cottage. There's 2 cottages, one half each of the wool shed. And it has a large lounge and a full kitchen, and they can use our tennis court and our sauna and the pool and all that stuff, right? So there's lots of facilities. They get very nice view from up the hill where it is, and it's very quiet. It's very comfortable. Now we've been learning as we go. We've never run anything like that before, and we have something called. We joined something called travel auctions, or bought their product, which essentially means that they make an advert for us on the radio or TV. People bid on what they think the 2-day stay would be worth, and then we get sort of an average of those bids that we get from this travel auction. And it's a way of essentially filling empty days. So we do it for weekdays because they're hardest to sell. What we've found, though, is that when people pay less, so here's my question. When people pay less, they want more. So all these people have paid half price or less for a 2-day midweek stay. They all arrive early, and they all use all of the facilities and eat all of the food we provide. And that's fine. We're not complaining about that because that's kind of included. And in general, if we've had people that have paid less, they attribute less value to it, and they become more of a pain in the ass, essentially. So we now put the prices up again because we were annoyed with essentially people just complaining for the sake of complaining. But is that your experience? Have you ever had, I don't know if you've ever done anything similar, but if people pay less, they expect more. Is that true?
Oh, I might disagree a bit. I think that I've seen both ends of that spectrum. We were just in Montana, and I stayed in a hotel that was $89 a night, and I got exactly what we paid for four of us staying in a one bedroom cabin, and and so I didn't expect any more or less from that. It was pretty nice. I asked them, if we could reserve it for the next night because I wasn't sure how long we were staying, and they were like, sure, and they didn't charge us anything. They didn't give us a hard time. We had something to attend and midday, so we were checking out later than typical. And I asked them, and they accommodated and didn't seem to bug them. But I think it kind of depends. Maybe that's probably an easy out. Um,
Yeah, well, I can give you another example. So we had a family stay a couple of weeks ago, and the husband of the family was here on business, so his company was paying for the accommodation, and which means that they didn't pay anything for it. And there was the wife, and there was a son as well. And checkout is 11 a.m. here, which is very generous in general. And Fiona went up there, my other half, and said, "Hey, 11:30. Checkout was half an hour ago. We need to clean it because we got other people coming in. Yada yada yada." And the lady's response was, "We'll leave when it stops raining." As in other words, I'm not going to lift a finger, and you just go away and stop being annoying. It was just I'm baffled. So
well,
we're now doing a test where we put the price up.
Yeah, and see if that keeps them at bay. I do know that there's I have my own proclivity is if I'm going into if I'm taking the family, if we're going somewhere and we're staying at a hotel, it is always preferable, especially if you have kids, if you can dump your stuff at the hotel, even if they don't let you check into the room early, so that you're free of all the the gear for the day if you're going to visit and look around and stuff. And so I do think that that's something that's not uncommon in most hotels. Even the higher end hotels, they will certainly take your stuff and lock it up for you until you're ready to check in. My guess is probably the best solution in that case would be to not pressure people to leave early, and then simply to try to accommodate the people coming in later and saying, you know what, we understand you're having to check in a little bit later. Let's comp you, a bottle of rum or whatever. You know what I mean? So instead of pissing one person off, you let them both feel like they've gotten added value, if you can.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'll do that way. I understand with a hotel because they got many rooms.
Yeah.
And they got more
flexibility,
capacity to do that. But it's just, I don't know, the whole thing of we give you 11 a.m. checkout, and then 11:30 you still haven't moved a finger, and go, no, it's not our problem, it's the raining.
Yeah, well,
make the rain stop.
I've got so much experience running a B&B too, Lars, so I know nothing.
Anyway, that was just my half rant, half question for the day, because I find it intriguing studying these people and the social behavior that they have. So.
Well, I'd be curious if people out there. Well, I'd be curious if anybody's listening that they have a different sort of experience, or they think that it's maybe, sort of specific to their country. We'd love to hear it, and we do have a website, right? We have a Facebook page, and if you'd like, you can shoot a note to either Lars or I on Twitter. And if you do, Lars will bring his chainsaw to your house and limb one of your trees for you.
Absolutely.
Anyways, go ahead, Lars. I interrupted.
I'll charge you for it.
Yeah.
So, I found this really interesting article, and I've been hanging out a bit on Medium because there's some really interesting content there. And we all use web browsers. I would dare to venture a guess and say every listener on this show will use a web browser pretty much every day. And no, most people don't really think about web browsers much. If you're a web developer, like I do a lot of web development stuff, then you tend to worry a bit about it, especially whether people are using Chrome or Firefox. But in general, a web browser is just something that people use, and most people don't really give it any thought. However, there is a lot of, let's say, company encouragement from certain angles to use a specific browser, because Google make their Chrome browser, and if you use their browser, then you're most likely going to log in so you can transport your bookmarks and everything, but they also get all your browsing history and your trends and everything, so they can sell you better ads. Firefox has a million plugins, and the idea is that if you are using any kind of plugin, then it will probably work in Firefox. And it's also Firefox and Chrome kind of battle a bit about being the most web standardized browser, or whatever you want to call it, but having the most common standards so that everything works on them. But this particular article says, well, even though you know these browsers, and you probably heard of Safari and Internet Explorer, did you know that there are a ton of other browsers that are really popular in markets that you might not have considered? And so there's often you see these diagrams of Chrome has so much, Safari has so much, and so on. But let's have a look at, in this case, all platforms, as broad as we can. So it's desktop, tablet, mobile, everywhere in the world. And the top 5 browsers, and this really surprised me, is Chrome is number 1. That's not the surprising bit. Everybody knows that. Chrome is the most used browser because it also runs on Android. And there are so many Android devices around. But number 2 and 3, I would have said Firefox and IE. I don't know about you, Joel. Would it have been your second and third guess?
I would have guessed IE, and after that, it's just kind of a crapshoot. I mean, I don't have a strong opinion on them. I mean, I've used Yandex in the past, and I haven't read this article. I'm just starting to look at it, but it's really hard to know unless you're in China and India and you're paying attention.
Yeah.
How are you gonna know? Because that's where most of the people are.
I know, but it was just me. I live in that world, and I went 2 and 3, Firefox, IE. I'm not sure what order they were, but no, number 2 is Safari, and that frightens me as a web developer because Safari is absolute rubbish. I'm not just saying that because it's Apple. It is a terrible browser. It is so hard to develop for because they don't adhere to any standards, and they're miles behind on a lot of things. But no, it's number 2 at 14%, and then the third one, which to be honest, I had completely forgotten about. Like, I've heard of this, I don't know, many months ago. UC Browser. Anyone heard about that?
Well,
UC Browser. Their logo is a squirrel.
Yeah, that's the one that I'd seen the logo for before, but I've never used it.
No, because this is a browser made by the Alibaba Group. So if you don't know Alibaba, it's kind of like the eBay of China. Alibaba is online, classifieds, selling stuff, auctions, that sort of stuff. But they've grown to be much more than that.
Oh yeah, they've got pieces of pretty much everything. You name it, and they're involved. Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
We talked about Weiray a while back.
Yeah.
Remember, probably about 3-4 episodes back. Yeah. Weiray has had money injected by Alibaba.
Yeah.
So this, augmented reality GPS device is backed by Alibaba. So their browser, the UC browser, has 9% of the world market. 9%. And I'm guessing that's mainly because they're in China, or Asia, in general, but particularly China.
But even if you think,
to be honest,
if half the world has access to the internet, and I don't know what the most recent stats are, that means that browser has 200 to 250 million users. So it's not. Well, yeah. 10% is not inconsequential.
No, it's not. It's huge.
Yeah. And
it's a browser that I would guess most people either have heard of and don't know what it is, or forgotten about, or never heard of. If you do use UC browser every day as your main browser, please give us a comment. Let us know what it's like and why you're using it. I would love to know more. And funny enough, Edge is not on there.
Yeah, so, there was an article out. ZDNet. There was an article today about Edge that I read, and I think that in this, I'm reading through this article. It does point out at one point that that they think that for the most part that IE is undercounted in most of these stats, and I'm not sure exactly what the thought was behind that. Edge. I don't know. I know that Microsoft tried to get uptake that was really dependent on Windows 10 uptake, in particular in China, and it's not really caught on. I've been using Edge along with Brave as my backup for the past, I don't know, year or so. And I go back and forth. I don't particularly like Brave. I don't really like any of them. To me, it's like going to the bathroom, but maybe might not be a good analogy. As long as the toilet works, I don't really care what color it is and that kind of stuff. And I think for the average user, that's what they just want something that works every time.
Absolutely. Yep.
And it drives me nuts because
I agree.
People. I mean, I help people at work all the time with their devices, and most of them are using Chrome or something like that. But that's only because the gentleman that does our desktop support is comfortable with it, and most of them don't have. They don't really utilize anything except for maybe the same 3 or 4 different searches. It's kind of like if you had a Maserati and you drove it in second gear 20 miles an hour to get to the grocery store to get your groceries. What's the point?
Yeah, it's true. And it's like, it's just to kind of get into a different part of this is that, say Russia, there's a good example of Russia here. Like, now you've seen the article, but would you have, like, I would have said Chrome's the number 1 browser in Russia, and it is. But number 2, I would have gone with Firefox or something. But no, it's an open source browser called Yandex. Yeah. And I've never heard of that. I've never heard of Yandex.
Oh, no. So Yandex is one that I've used before. And I've kind of gone back and forth, mainly just because I was curious. And it's interesting, especially when you do, because obviously I can't speak Russian, but especially when you do searches, I would go and do comparisons of searches versus IE or Brave or whatever else. And the results are quite interesting and the rankings are quite interesting. But but I couldn't tell you sort of technically if it's superior. And of course, then I'm just sort of paranoid. I really don't trust much of anything that comes out of Russia. But I've also been really curious why Yandex hasn't been purchased.
You're being a good American.
Well, no, I don't think Russians would allow Yandex to be sold. To be honest, I don't think that the government there would be. It's been surprising to me why it hasn't. Because it's an easy way into Russia, into that market. But maybe there's not value there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's I found it very interesting because in Australia the market's so small that we don't have any particular browsers. We have Chrome, and Firefox and Safari, and that's about it. That's what people use.
Well, but I think it does go. It goes to that point though, Lars. So what we hear in our little bubbles is not the rest of the world. And I think more and more you're seeing where these particular products are not necessarily locked, but very much sort of defined by the market they're in. And to the extent that you can get out of that, like Chrome, which isn't necessarily locked to one market, will be your success. And, unless you're this UC browser in China where you've got, 1.5 billion people to grow into, or 1.7, that it's pretty tough to do anything. You're limited by your market. So anyways, sorry, what was your point?
Yeah, no, it's just mobile is another one, because most likely when people say web browsers, you think desktop, but mobile is now actually bigger than desktop. Apparently Android has now surpassed Windows as world's number 1 internet platform. And on mobile, again, Chrome's number 1 everywhere. There's not really any surprise there. But number 2 is Safari, hence all the iOS devices. But 3 and 4 is UC browser, again, and then Samsung Internet, which I must admit I haven't used either.
Me neither.
I don't know. It's probably built on Chrome, I would have thought. It's probably a Chromium port.
A wrap, yeah.
And then the 5th one, which is about the same size as the Samsung one, is Opera. Or Opera Mini, because it's for mobile, which is a Norwegian browser. And they've got a new browser out as well, which is called Vivaldi, which is a successor to Opera.
Have you tried that before? I mean, I know there's some real... There's some real loyal followers that I've seen. I've never tried it.
In general, Opera has been the most standards compliant and the fastest to implement new standards and new features of web browsers for many, many years. They've always sat around sort of 1, 2, 3% market share, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because they just didn't have enough cash to push it, like Google. Maybe I'm not sure, but it is a genuinely really good browser, and I've been using Vivaldi on and off, not as a main browser, but here and there, and that's really good too. It's and I like the design of it. Maybe that's the Scandinavian in me, but it's really nicely done.
So here's an example. So, people look at the market and they go, oh, there's Android and then there's iOS and that's it. But then when you look at this, there seems to be a pretty healthy competition, at least if you look at the big picture worldwide. If you peel beneath the layers, if you just were to turn on the TV or go on social media, probably half of these you wouldn't hear about on a regular basis. And in some cases,
right.
They have hundreds of millions of users.
Yeah, and there's a good point made in this article as well that what about Facebook? Isn't that kind of a browser as well?
Sure. Or so today the news is out that LinkedIn is over 500 million users. Now, obviously, a portion of those are spoof accounts or accounts that are just out looking for information. But it's the same thing. It's not exactly the same as Facebook, but you can find information and search for articles and stuff on LinkedIn, and has the same capacity. It's also very interesting when you look at LinkedIn, the markets where it has the deepest penetration, these smaller, like the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, these countries where, or Norway. Anyways, and it's actually very similar to some of these browsers, the way that it's penetrated certain markets. But yeah, what else besides Facebook do you think could be similar? I mean, Twitter could be that way, couldn't it? Not really.
People don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's just if you've used the Windows 10 Facebook app, which is, let's say it's average, if you open links in it on desktop, it'll open inside of the Facebook app, which is a web view and it runs on essentially Edge. But it does it in app. It doesn't go to a different experience. It doesn't do that on phone, but that's kind of coming that way.
So I mean, yeah. So that whole market could just sort of morph over time without anybody sort of seeing it coming. I mean, it's not sort of the static thing.
I think Netscape's going to make a return.
You think so? So it's kind of like, it's sort of like a giant sort of, one of those collapsing, what are they called? Like a head. It's a shape. It's got 20 sides or whatever, where it collapses down and then it blows back up. It's sort of the same thing with search. There's a certain number, they get better. Everybody uses them. Somebody comes up with something better. There's innovation and they explode back up, and there's a lot more. Then people identify the one that's really cool, then it collapses back down. And I kind of use search like that. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm describing that right.
Yeah, there's a natural culling of products that aren't good, right?
Yeah.
You can go back and look at the car industry as well. The car industry, we have a bit off on a tangent here, but in the 40s and 50s and 60s in the UK, there were, I don't know, maybe 100 different car manufacturers, and now there's like 4, because the best ones have been identified, and the ones that people want to buy the product from. And it'll be the same with browsers or any other technology, I'm sure. There'll be an explosion of it, and then people sort of go, that one's not good, that one's good, that one's not good, and so on.
Well, and something what happens if we, sort of eventually we get to make our own? We are our own browsers. We define, what that experience is for each one of us. That would be really cool. So like your own, it's your own browser, right? It's not necessarily a product that's in mass produced. It's produced in mass, but for individuals. To me, that's what mobile.
All right, so, but thank you for the philosophy lesson, Dr. Joel.
No, I'll be quiet. If you can't have fun with it when you think about it, what's the point? You know?
I agree. It is all being personalized, right? That's why that to me the Windows Phone was the best one to me, because I could exactly make it do what I wanted. It was a very personal experience.
Yeah.
They kind of ruined that with Windows 10 though, but there you go.
It's okay. They're there, Lars.
Yeah. Now I wanna change subjects. I think we've talked about browsers enough. We might come back to it, and we got a future episode on India lined up that might come in the next few episodes.
That would be cool if we could talk
And
about what's going on there. Yeah.
yeah, because I just don't know much about India. So we're talking to a few people about having a show on with people that live in India and their perspective on it. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, I found this link through kind of a mysterious ways, as you do sometimes on the internet, clicking. And there's a company called, well, I don't even know what it's called, but it's Aemass, Aemass, Aemass. I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
That's a
AAE, but it's Aemass. I don't know. But that's what it's called. And if you go to Aemass.com, it won't tell you much, to be honest. But I found this through a Facebook post that someone had got some exposure to it. And what this product does is it uses your normal mobile device. So your Android or your iOS. I think this is Android, if I'm not mistaken.
I only have abnormal mobile devices. What about my abnormal one? Sorry, I'll shut up.
Yeah, shut up. And now there is something plugged into the device. I'll share this video on the show notes as well. It's a very interesting video. And there is something plugged into the device, but it looks like it's just a standard HTC or Samsung Android phone that this guy is recording a motorbike with. And he's sort of filming it from a few angles. And it doesn't show that much, but then he takes the file that it produces, uploads it to their web portal, and he gets a 3D experience. Like he's captured 3D image essentially just from his phone. And it's very, very well done. It looks very good. It's very detailed. And I'm just intrigued. Like, if we can do this, I know Microsoft has had a similar thing in their Microsoft Research Department about recording a 3D object, going all the way around it to get a sense of the 3D object, so you can build a model of it. But this seems much more detailed, and it seems like you don't have to actually go around the whole object. Like you don't have to film the whole scene that you're experiencing.
It's sort of putting
this just grabbed me.
Yeah, well, it's putting the 3-dimensional experience. I think it's putting a premium on that versus the actual image itself, right? So it's not, at least from when I was looking at that, my thought was, gosh, I have a kiddo that he works as an electrician at the shipyard, but sometimes they go in these really small spaces and they're renovating ships. And that would be so cool if you could go into a space like that and take a picture, and then you can share it over the internet with an engineer down in Seattle or somewhere, and they could look at the space and go, oh, you know what, the solution is not going to work. Now, it doesn't appear to be sort of a technical picture, that is to say, giving you absolute measurements, although I'm sure you could get the information from the source file, I'm guessing, maybe not, but that is really cool. My question, because you mentioned this, it's like, okay, so they have to upload or take this data and then do their voodoo to it, and they're going to charge you for that experience. And that's the rub to me. It's like, okay, so how long does that take, and how much is it going to cost?
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't actually considered that part of it, to be honest. I was just blown away by the detail that they've done. And I think you will absolutely be able to get perfect measurements from this, because just the way that they present this 3D object that they get out of it is very detailed, and it seems very accurate. So I keep comparing this to HoloLens, obviously. The spatial mapping in HoloLens is nowhere near this detailed at all. You could probably tune it up so that you could get really detailed spatial mapping for holograms and HoloLens experiences. But I would think that it would just drain the battery really quickly, and you might not be able to get it that detailed. This seems really good, like really, really good.
So it kind
I
of
would definitely would be able to get absolute measurements from it.
The thing, it seemed like in the video, anyways, and maybe this was just sort of, something they did for promotion, but it was able to actually pull apart. So they walked around this motorcycle, pull apart this engine, and sort of explode it out, if you will, a little bit, so you could see the different components. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But I could see in particular with
I don't think you'd be able to do that with this though.
Well, imagine if you had that with a HoloLens, where you have that three-dimensional image, but then you could actually manipulate the objects, and you could actually expose the components.
I could see this would be a way of building 3D models for sure, because if you're me and you have no sense of design whatsoever in 3D, certainly not 3D design, this would be like, oh, I need a motorcycle. I'll just film my actual motorcycle and I'll make an object out of that. Now we're a little bit away from that because it records everything. It gets walls and floors and everything as well. But I'm sure there would be a way to do that because you got it as data. It's a digital image.
Lars and I are starting a design firm.
It's called the two noobs.
Yeah, that's it. No, that was a joke of the week. Actually, that was just it. I'm colorblind.
I don't know. By the way, I don't know if you heard it, but I just had like a swarm of flock, or I don't know what the collective noun is, but about 200 cockatoos just flew over our property. So if you heard that in the background, that was what that noise was.
Okay, you better go wash your car, because hopefully they didn't take a rest stop.
No, that's not what cockatoos do. They land on lawns, and they'll eat your lawn and just tear it apart.
Really?
Or they'll land on your new wooden deck. Yeah, you just had your new wooden deck built, and they'll land on it, and in half an hour they would have chewed it to pieces.
Well, why do they chew? Are they looking for bugs, or do they eat grass? What are they doing?
So they eat seeds, and that's obviously what they're looking for in the grass. And I think the chewing of the wood is a natural thing that they would land on a tree and start chewing in the tree to get something out of it,
like a maggot or something.
But yeah, it's a real nuisance.
Interesting. So do you get to shoot them or not?
Well, no, we don't shoot. We don't shoot them.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I like them. They're pretty birds, right? And often the uglier a bird sound is, the prettier the bird.
Yeah.
And these cockatoos are big. I don't know if you've ever seen a cockatoo, a sulfur crested cockatoo. So the white bird with the little mohawk that comes up that's yellow.
I've not seen one before.
But they're a big bird. They're like chicken sized.
Really?
Yeah. So 200 of those flying over is quite.
So are they protected as well? Right. So like, you can't mess with them?
I would have thought so.
Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, they're native birds. So.
We don't have much around. Well, we have a lot of birds around here, but there's not many that you can actually hunt. There is one called the spruce chicken, or that's what we call them. And I have to say that
at least you got lots of guns.
Oh, these are the dumbest birds. I mean, I have a picture of one up on Deer Mountain hiking a while back, and it was literally 4 feet away from me in a tree. And their only thing they can do is, hold still and think that you don't see them. But
Did you see it?
Oh yeah, I saw it. And if they don't eat, they're not very good to eat.
It didn't work then.
but you can hunt them. Most of the birds around here are protected. The eagles, of course, and ravens and animals like that you can't shoot, and most of them you wouldn't want to shoot. But anyways, sorry.
Anyway, we went from 3D modeling to shooting.
I know.
I guess we're the Americans on this show, and
get a gun.
So, no, this is the kind of technology that we need more of, right? We need more accessible 3D modeling tools, accessible ways of getting non-modelers to use it, I think, is important. Because I keep banging on about HoloLens, but it really isn't anything if you don't have a good 3D model for your hologram. So I'm kind of excited about this. We both did try and sign up for their newsletter or their guest thing or whatever it is, in hope that they might, divulge more information. But so far they haven't.
Yeah. So
so if we have an update in the future, we'll let you know.
So yeah, we'll put a link up, and I'll shame them into getting us into their demo or whatever of their site, so we can check it out.
That sounds like a great idea.
Public shaming works so well, doesn't it?
I'm sure it
I'll
does.
just ask very nicely, right? Give me what I want, damn it.
Hey?
I'll just ask nice. Well, they're online,
Yeah.
aren't they? Do they have a Twitter handle or do they have a Facebook page?
Well, they have a Facebook page that I went to, and the last time they posted was like 8 months, 10 months ago.
That means
And
you want to follow them because that means they're actually working on something.
that's what I'm thinking. Exactly. I think they've got all the money they need, and now they're actually building shit.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think you're right about that.
Well, anyways. So what else were we going to talk about? What was the last thing? Or
Well,
were
you
you done
found
with
this
that?
really interesting site. It's not as tech related as the first two topics here we just talked about.
What do you mean it's not tech related?
Oh, shut up! It doesn't have
God.
computers involved. But it's well, you explain it. It's called Mad Agriculture. What is it?
Well, so this dude, and I can't remember his name. Doesn't matter. Anyways, he worked for big agriculture companies for years, and he worked in their research department, and got really fed up with this whole notion of they basically working on ways to beef up beef, if you will, how to grow beef and more efficiently, and doing this for years and years. Got fed up with it and decided, I'm going to do my own thing. And I'm sure there's a lot more to the story than that, but we only have so much time. So he started this site, company, whatever you want to call it, Mad Agriculture, madagriculture.org. And the idea is that simply there are certain insects that are much more efficient at producing protein and fat than pretty much any other animal in the world. And I don't know the exact species of fly, but what the premise is that in particular in the U.S. we have so much food waste. That is waste, like the rinds off an orange or something of that nature. That if we could simply take our food waste and use insects to cultivate it, we could create our own feed for animals like chickens, fish, farm fish, also to supplement soil, and using these flies with thrown away food. And what caught my ear when I was listening to this guy talk was he said, in a 1 meter square of these, and I'll use the term maggot because it's a fly that's creating larvae from eating the food, and the larvae is, of course, then what you would then take and make into the feed. In a 1 meter square, it creates the same amount of protein and fat as a 1 acre soybean farm would. So that's roughly 2.89 feet or something like that in a meter. So in a 3 by 3 square foot area.
Yeah, that's about a meter by a meter.
Yeah. So and it's called the black soldier fly is what it's called. And
so it's a particular type of insect that he's using.
Yes, and obviously and then also there's also castings that are created, and that part is then used as fertilizer. And the reason I kind of come back to this as a continuing theme in my thought process is that here's someone who got fed up doing what he was doing and wanted something else. So first of all, that's exceptionally cool. The second thing is taking a traditional problem and not solving just one problem, right? What to do with food waste, but also solving another one, which is what do we feed? What protein do we feed to our livestock that we turn around and eat? And then, of course, you take the offshoot of that process and turn it back into the soil, creating more nutrient-rich soil. So there's literally no waste in the process, with the exception of transporting and collecting the waste food. And this is where he kind of gets a little bit into the whole notion of, well, if you have to transport it so many miles, then it loses its efficiency. So it's definitely an
Food
idea.
miles.
Yeah, it's definitely a sort of a regional sort of effort. But I thought it was cool and thought we should mention it because the thought process, and also for the people that are thinking about, are fed up with what they're doing and want to try something different. This is a great example. Go read up on the sky. There's more projects, other projects that they're trying out as well, and it's really cool.
I agree. I had never heard of this before. And to be honest, you actually sent me the wrong link initially to another subsection of this website.
Yeah.
And there was no, it's fine because that was a volunteer group that was collecting the food, so the food waste. So they had agreements with supermarkets, I'm assuming, any sort of produce selling store, and they would then come and pick up the food that they couldn't sell anymore. That was still perfectly fine. And they would then distribute this to people that would actually eat it. So that's slightly a different take on the whole food waste issue. Whereas what you're saying here is that the food waste of actual food that we can't, either we've discarded because we don't use that bit or has gone off, they can actually use that still to cultivate animal feed. And that to me is just, amazing. It's kind of like when I talk about how we treat rubbish or garbage in Denmark when I talk to Australians, because in Australia we have landfills. We dig holes and we put shit in it and we cover it up and then we say, hey, it's gone. In Denmark we burn it all. And yes, there are some controversial, ideas about why you shouldn't burn garbage, but in the end, we capture all of the nasty stuff, all of the little, all the metals and whatever else comes out of burning garbage, and all the ash we use for concrete. So we actually build stuff with it, and the heat that we generate by burning stuff, we heat high pressure water with it, and we heat about 500,000 homes in the greater Copenhagen area. So stuff like that, combined with what you're saying, it just makes sense. Like, stop wasting so much, which we're very good at in the Western world. So I appreciate this.
Yeah, I always get really jazzed when I see people who just decide the hell with it. I'm going to do something else, and in particular when they have that enthusiasm, and you can hear it in their voice, and you can see it. That it, they don't have to be. It didn't really matter how much they're paid to do this. It's just they have a fire in them, and I think even if you just need to get the fire in you a little bit, go read up on this site and find your own inspiration for whatever you've got going. So, and the founder I think he's on Twitter. I think it's Philip G. Taylor. If you go look him up, and there's links to the website on his Twitter handle as well. And
cool. Okay.
And we'll have them on our show notes.
We'll definitely put the website up there on the show notes. Yeah, for sure. Now, do you know what time it is, John?
Oh yeah, it's time for me to go to bed. No, it's time for a joke. But I thought I already did one.
It is. It's time. It's time for the joke of the week.
It's the joke of the week, so come along with me. I cannot promise it will be funny, but it's the joke of the week.
Did you know that there's a new version of Microsoft Edge out? It's coming in the next few weeks. It'll allow you to download Google Chrome up to 5 times faster.
Oh God! Did you come up with that with yourself?
Kinda. Oh, that was great.
Yeah, that's. Oh yeah, as a defender of Edge, it's tough,
but it's true.
Somebody's got to do it.
It's true.
So it's
the first thing people do. They open Edge to download Chrome.
Yeah, and every time you go anywhere on Google, it's like, get Chrome now. Holy cow, they want to shovel it down your throat so fast.
Oh yeah.
I digress. Lars, it's been real. It's been fun.
It has been.
Yes, we have a great guest. We have a great guest coming up this week. And as always, I've learned something new.
I hope so. That was the idea.
That cockatoos have red. Was it red? Did you say red or yellow?
Well,
mohawks?
There's different kinds. We have many of the sulfur-crested cockatoos, which are white with a yellow mohawk.
Did they have piercings?
Oh yeah, of course. many of them. But no, you also get black cockatoos that are even bigger. All sorts of stuff. Anyway, Australian fauna for you.
Well, the next time I'm by, well, you can you can point them out to me.
I will. Oh, jeez.
Until then, Lars.
Yes. Stay afloat. Bye.
It's been real. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening in on another episode of The Dane and the Pain. We record across the Pacific, across hemispheres, and across time zones. You can find us on www.daneandthepain.com. Our Twitter handle is Dane_Pain, and we are The Dane and the Pain on YouTube and Facebook. We're also on your favorite podcast app, including iTunes, and please join our fan club by clicking the Register Now button on our website to know about upcoming shows and any free stuff we may have to share. See you next time on The Dane and the Pain.